what is your life's purpose, right? And it's a very loaded question, and I am so amazed by not only the clarity of each of your answers, but the boldness and the excitement that comes as you speak it. And I don't know about you, but one of the hardest things is to get to a point of clarity. And once we have that, it's just a matter of time for that vision to come to realization. Well, welcome back to another episode of Unexpectedly Successful. And as you may remember, having said before, the episodes ending with a 0 are a special type of episode. And this is a very special one for me, and you'll get to hear why. And you will see many more guests than I usually have, and there's a reason for that. And today we are discussing a powerful book titled The Transformative Power of a Name. Here it is. And this book, I had the honor and privilege to be one of the 11 co-authors. And it's a powerful book, and we'll have insights, jokes that if you want to hear the full story, you'll have to purchase the book so you can be an insider as well. And with that, I am going to start introducing my guests, and I will ask for all of us to go around the room introducing who you are and a little bit about you. So whoever wants to start.
Well, I'll start. My name is Cecily Cooper, and I am the visionary author on this project. A little bit about me: I'm an educator, I'm a mom, I'm a woman of God, I'm a daughter of the Most High King, I'm a writer, I'm a midwife for people's stories. And I am super honored to be on this platform today. Thank you, Dr. Griselda, for inviting us here today.
Thank you so much, Cecily. And we'll unpack a little bit of what you said, but let's keep going with the intros.
I'll jump in.
Come on in, Felicity.
I'm Felicity Blunt, and I am therapist, life coach, author now.
Yay!
Speaker, daughter, sister. All of those titles, all of those roles. But I think after coming through a season like this, more importantly, I'm a glory carrier. Because my life is the epitome of carrying the glory of God. And so I want my life to be that. I want people to see God through the way that I live and the way that I move. So that is who I am.
I love it. Wow. Okay. All right. Powerful statements. Keep them coming.
Yeah, I can jump in. I am Diane Reed. I am a CEO, a founder, a coach, a speaker, a daughter. Most importantly, I'm a daughter of the Most High King. And I feel like that's the most important identity for me, because that reminds me I'm already loved, I'm already chosen, I'm already accepted. So anything I do is from that identity. So I'm happy to be here.
Oh, I'm honored to have you here, Dan. Who's next?
I can go next. I am Brittany Wagner. Much like these other ladies, I'm a daughter, a sister, a friend, but yes, most importantly, a daughter of the Most High God. And it's just a privilege to be able to share a portion of the journey that we get to go on as a part of this life, and being connected with God, the doors that He opens, and the opportunities that He gives us to grow and go from glory to glory. So blessed to be here with all you ladies.
Yes. Wow. Yes. Erica.
Okay, I'll go. All right. So I'm a king's kid. So I'm royalty, which is wonderful. I am an educator, longtime educator. So I believe I have a special place in heaven for time served.
Yes, you do. Yes. You do. All educators.
Yeah.
Amen.
I am silly, as you might be able to tell. I am a dancer. I am a coach. I am a mover. I am a choreographer. I am a helper. It warms my heart and makes me feel like I'm in my purpose when I am helping people, especially when it is to feel better. Thank you, Cecily. I can say now I'm a published author, which
Yay!
sounds so sweet. Oh my goodness, I can't believe that. That's wonderful. And I'm always a student. I believe that for me, learning is lifetime and growing is a lifetime commission for me. But all those other stuff. I'm a mama and a daughter, and yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Erica. Erica Helper. Dr. Judine.
Hello, everyone. So, a little bit about me. My name is Judine Burles. So, I'm a pharmacist by training. I'm actually originally from Jamaica, so I moved here for college. So, like most of you here, I'm also a mama. I'm a wife. I'm a daughter, an investor. But most importantly, I'm a child of God. All that we have is for His glory, and it's my job to share His light. So I'm so excited to be here, especially with these beautiful ladies. So it's definitely an honor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Judine. And for my audience, I wanted us to start a little bit different than I usually do with my other guests, because we want to set the stage for what is to come in the discussion of this process of writing the book and the transformations that have happened from this very diverse group of women, powerful, each individual one in their own way. So I am super pumped about getting to the nitty-gritty of the questions. And to get us going, let's go to the genesis of this crazy project and the person behind it. Okay, Cecily. So I can share at the end what my process was to get into this transformative process of writing a book. But from the visionary author, Cecily, can you please just give us a context of what that is to begin with? And then how did you decide to be one for all of us?
Ooh, wow. So I was an early reader and writer. Reading and writing and words in general have always impacted me greatly, the good ones and the bad ones. So it just made sense that somehow I found myself as a visionary author. I love going to the library. My dad used to take us every weekend to Barnes and Nobles, where we got to buy a book, and then we had to sit on this little bench and spend time with books. So books have always been a part of my life. I'm an English teacher by certification. And so, yeah, just one day a friend of mine said, I think you would be amazing at this. You need to do this. And when I thought about it, I thought everything aligns with what is already in my wheelhouse. Helping women. I was the director of a women's ministry, as I mentioned, an English teacher, the oldest of 3 girls, just always sort of taking care of people, taking responsibility for helping people. And so it just made sense that I would not only write my story, but I would drag other people into it with me. And so, yeah, that's how it started. It just started with someone seeing those gifts in me and just saying, I think you'd be amazing at it. And then me realizing that she was right, but it required me stepping out on faith. So yeah, this is very much an act of faith. And I'm just super grateful that you all are here, because, when you step out into uncharted territory, you wonder if anyone will see what you see, will feel what you feel. And God placed it in my heart, the topic. Yeah. And so you all are the evidence that it wasn't crazy. That
It was a crazy good thing.
crazy good thing. It was a big, scary, what is it? Big, hairy, audacious, bold, project and idea. But it took you all to be able to hear the sound, the God in it for you. And so my heart is just filled with gratefulness and happiness when I just look at y'all. Yeah, that's where words just, it's hard to explain, but I'm just so blessed.
Thank you, Cecily. And in preparation for this conversation, I asked these ladies what they're most proud about. And Cecily said, I am most proud of two things: the launch of my business and the fact that the lives of 10 women, counting myself, were positively impacted because I said yes. So it's a beautiful statement, and it's a call for all of us to say our yes. So thank you so much, Cecily. Thank you for being the catalyst to not only that project, but this conversation, and who knows what will come from it, from this yes. So thank you so much for being
Buckle up.
Yes, get ready, ladies. All right, so I'm going to switch to the co-authors. And for my audience, we were a total of 10 co-authors, and we were not able to have everybody here. But the book, you can see the beautiful pictures of each one of us. So just more plugins. You need to get your copy. Anyway, for the co-authors, what was your individual journey to getting you to consider becoming an author? I mean, this is like, was it in your life dreams? Was it like, Cecily, like turn your arm and say you must be part of this? I'm kidding, Cecily. I know you would never.
I would.
It's like, you need to. Like, give me context, because this is a very unique proposition if you hear it out of nowhere. So how did that preparation for you to even consider becoming an author come about for each one of you?
I can say for me, it was an awesome opportunity that basically brought some accountability in my life. I have always loved books as well. My parents gave me that gift through the way they would read to me every night. And so it just deposited a love of the written word into me. And I had also been gifted by our Father to be able to write. I've been told that all through my life. Like, you can write, you should really, even in college, my professors, they were like, you should keep on writing, you should keep on. And it went in one ear and whoop, right out the other. Just life. There's other things to do, other goals to be accomplished. But there's always been that little thing, like, you are sleeping on a gift, but at the same time, I'm so appreciative of this experience, because it's like we got to go behind the curtain. You see books everywhere. How do you get it? How did that happen? And so I'm so appreciative to have been able to be behind that curtain and take a look around, and then to have this beautiful product. So yeah, that was it for me.
So Erica, how did you come to that decision to say, this is an opportunity and I'm going to say yes? Like, what was that moment?
I remember Miss Cooper reaching out, and she just offered, she said, this is what I'm going to do. And I believe she gave a nice recording, gave me a link to a recording that she had done. I listened to it. I said, oh, that sounds like I could do that, and I want to be a part. And I had FOMO from the fear of missing out. I was like, don't leave me behind. So I jumped at it. I jumped at it.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing, Erica. Who's next?
I'll jump in. Much like Cecily and Erica, I have always loved books. I've always loved to read, always looking to find myself in stories, from as early as I can remember. Also had a mom who was an avid reader. She used to read to me when I was younger, and she just was always, reading something, going from one book to the next. And so she definitely passed that down to me. I've always had a love for words. It's just something, I don't know, just significant about words. And Was always eager to look up the meaning of words, and I wanted to know the etymology, and it's just really exciting to me to learn about what words mean, and where they come from. And I've always wanted to write, from reading at a very early age. I started kind of playing around with writing even as early as elementary school. I had written this little book of short stories that I was so excited about that I asked my mom if she would help me to bind it, so that it was like official. So I did my own illustrations, and that is not my gift.
Oh, wow. We want to see it now, Felicity.
Oh, no.
That's your next publication right there.
Elementary school. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to this project, so because I had always known that I wanted to write, I would start books. I would start writing things, but I never finished anything. And at the time that I met Cecily, I was actually working on a solo project, and I believe in alignment. Mm. And as soon as she and I talked and she told me the name of the book, I got chills, because 5 years prior, God had already told me that I was going to write about what I wrote about.
Wow.
And it just really, I was in tears, and I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, this is the moment right here, right now, is what God prepared me for 5 years prior. Like, I would sit and try to write it when God gave me the vision, and it just would not come. It would not come. And what that let me know was that it just wasn't time.
Mm. Wow. That's so beautiful. Timing, perfection in timing. Wow. Mm-hmm. All right. Woo. This is just the beginning, ladies. So let's keep it going.
So I can go next. So I remember when I got that email from Cecily, I was like, what? Honestly, I'm being, because the difference between us is I'm a numbers girl. I like numbers because they're black and they're white. It's either it's wrong or it's right. And then, I moved here from Jamaica, and I remember we had to take writing 101, and I struggled with that class, y'all. And because, we write very different at home. And so I was always a math girl. But, Cece and I met 2019, I believe. She was the leader of the Women's Leadership Development Institute at Bridgeway. And Cecily, I don't think if you knew this, but you were my first mentor. Mm. She was my first mentor, and she was all mine. She was in my small group. I got assigned to her. And, so she and I had built a relationship, and, the pandemic happened and we got separated a little bit. I was going through wilderness, and I remember during that wilderness in my marriage, I was praying in my closet, and God had said, you're going to write a book. I'm like, me, Jesus, right? So then fast forward a couple of years, last year, I got this note from Cecily, and I'm like, I don't know if I could do this, Jesus. And I just remember we had a conversation, and I went to God about it. I'm like, Jesus, this is all you, because these are not numbers on this page. These are letters. And I need to make them work. I mean, I have a son, and I took him to the library every day. So we were reading a lot of books and all of that. And so, yeah, it was terrifying for me, but God brought me through it, and he used Cecily to push me. I think she used the adjective of a midwife, and that's literally what she is. And then as a catalyst to push this process forward. So I'm very excited that she pushed me, and she pushed all of us, and took us on this journey with her. And now we all have amazing stories. As I read all of your stories, it's like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is deep.
Yes.
So thank you, Cecily, and just so grateful for the opportunity and the process.
Yes, Dr. Judine, chosen. Yes, for sure. Who's next, ladies?
I can go. So like Dr. Judine, I am a numbers person. I never thought of myself as a writer. I actually loved that in college I didn't have to take many writing courses because I was a math major. Applied mathematics was my major for that reason. And just through the course of meeting Cecily through another business coaching group, and through a company that I had that revolved around math, she actually encouraged me to write a book in 30 days. And during that process, I was in the process of writing a math workbook that kind of combined affirmations with coursework. But for some reason, it wasn't resonating. And at the top of last year, I just decided I would no longer offer any resistance to what the Lord would do to me, through me, and what he would have me to do. And when I made that declaration, there were so many different parts of myself that I started to discover. And part of that, through conversation with Cecily, was in fact that I had a story to tell. Wow. And being the youngest of 3, I have 2 older sisters. And just through my life journey, I just felt like my voice didn't matter and my story didn't matter. And through this book, I found the opportunity to share my perspective and share my story, even if it seemed to me to be minimal or minuscule. I wanted to share my perspective on the world, and I wanted to write this book so that I would be transformed first, so that as people read my story, they would be transformed. And that's what happened. I went through so much change writing this book and deciding to walk without fear, or walk in spite of the fear, because the fear was still there, but courage is doing it anyway. So I'm just grateful that I had the opportunity to just share my perspective, because for so long I felt like it didn't matter.
Wow. Thank you, Diane. And her, wow, her story is just amazing. And yeah. So question, did you get to publish the other book that you were working on for 30 days?
No, I did not, because actually, once I said I offer no resistance, I actually pivoted kind of my business mission and vision, and it pivoted to helping others to pivot as the Lord is calling them into a new thing, to actually call the confrontation of calling. And it deals with that moment when God is calling you to something else that you never imagined for yourself. What do you do in that case? And it comes through a whole lot of grieving. It comes through a whole lot of letting old things go and believing what God says about you instead of perceptions of yourself or what other people told you, because what he says is the truth. And how do you help people walk through that process? And because I've been through it, I feel like I have the authority to walk people through it. So
that's beautiful, Dan. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And nothing goes to waste. So I'm looking forward to those unfinished works that a couple of you all have mentioned. So let's see, more to come on that. and Brittany, or should I call you Britannia?
Yes, I wish I could say that when Cecily asked me, I went for it, but I have to be honest, and I have to say I was like, let me pray on that.
My husband, when he doesn't want to do something, he gives me, but let me pray about that. I'll come back.
Yep. And I'd gotten a couple prophetic words that I would be writing, but it had been on the shelf for so long that I kind of honestly forgot about it, if I'm being honest. So, when Cecily asked me, I had to really just sit and pray about it. And then I felt like the Lord was just unveiling some of the things that he has done in my life, to be like, this story's already written. Like, it's easy. You just got to put it into words. So, so that was part of the process of me going back to Cecily and going, okay, yeah, I feel led. I feel like the Lord's shown me that this is a go and this is the way that I should go. So I love the fact that he was so in the journey and in the process and reminded me of how much was already there. It was just putting it into words.
Wow. And just to share my own experience, I feel like I wasn't supposed to, but then I was supposed to, because it was perfect timing, as some of you mentioned. The first thing was, my mother always said that everybody needed to write a book. And that was something that she always said. And that was like me in childhood, and a memory there in archives. Then maybe a month or 2 before, I heard a speech by Cecily. We were in a coaching call, and the person facilitating said, what do you want to do it was like March of 2023. And what do you want to do the rest of the year? And me, why not? I want to be a published author. I want to write my first book. Okay, so for whoever is not familiar with writing a book, it's not like you just get up one day and then write it and then you're done the next day, right? So I don't know how I was just bold enough to say I will publish my first book. Fast forward, we were in a professional personal development group, and Cecily is presenting this very powerful concept. And I was not sure of what it meant. I wasn't sure of what the process was going to be. But as similar to what other ladies said, it was just God leading me, right? And for those who were born before cell phones, what I did was I wrote in a little piece of paper and I said, Cecily, I would like to be part of this project if you accept me as one of the co-authors. And I folded the little paper and passed it on across the table. And everybody's like, what is she doing? What is this about? And that's how my story joined these stories. And I believe that it was a divine timeliness, because later on, Cecily mentioned that she left that group open. She was going to close it on Friday. This presentation was Saturday, and she had agreed with herself that she was going to leave it open until Monday, which was the day that I actually said yes. And so thank you, Cecily, for giving me that little bit of extra day I needed to know about this project and jump into the wagon before it took off.
So good. So good. The note passing in class. I was like, you cannot do this. I have gotten in trouble many times for passing notes, but it was amazing. It just took me back to my childhood, receiving a note. Yes or no. Do you like me? Do you want to be my friend? Will you be my boyfriend?
Cecily?
My boyfriend. I mean, it just took me back. It just took me back. It was so cute.
Yes, for sure. But I needed to act upon it, and maybe somebody else, and I needed to have my spot there. Anyway,
You did it.
So Cecily, why the name, the transformative power of a name? Why that particular title to the book as the visionary author and the one to lead this effort?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I traveled to Nigeria with my pastor at the time, still Dr. Judine's pastor in church. I went with him and a group of other people to Nigeria to reclaim what was lost as a result of the Middle Passage. Unbeknownst to all of us, part of that entire experience was to receive a new name. And so I was sitting there just kind of listening to the names being called, sensing the reaction of the crowd, feeling the reaction in my own nervous system, but silently thinking that what I was going to receive wouldn't be anything special because of past trauma. Life had sort of taught me to be very reserved and cautious, how excited I would get in terms of what I would receive. And so when it was my turn to hear the name, he said that my name was Chinasa. God answers my prayers. And the entire room there was this, ooh, it was like this, it just went all through my body, and it literally rewired my nervous system. That moment, Chinasa, God answers my prayers, not heard my prayers, answers my prayers, which means he heard it and he went to work. And so I was transformed by the power of one name, a Nigerian name. All because I said yes to going on a trip that was beyond my budget at the time, that they didn't give us an itinerary. And so like all of you, that was my call outside of my comfort zone into a situation where I wasn't given a whole lot of details. And Dr. Judine, the numbers were there, and it was a large number, and I almost choked at that number. But when we sense God in a situation, we find a way, right? We find a way. And I found a way. Something said to me, this is not going to come around. This opportunity is not going to come around very often, and you need to be a part of it. And because of that, the transformative power of a name just seemed to be fitting. I thought, if I've been transformed by the power of a name, I'm pretty sure that there are other women out there who have also experienced a change, a major change, good
Hmm.
or bad, right?
Yes.
Because of
Yes.
one name. So that is when I stepped out of one name, right? I didn't change anything on paper. My name is still Cecily, but I was changed by this name that I was given. They didn't know me. I'd never seen them before, and I don't expect to ever see them again. But I just anticipated that there were other women who needed perhaps to step out of one name, to step out of the seasons that that one name represented for their lives. And perhaps into a new name and into a season, because we know in the Bible that whenever someone experienced a name change, everything changed for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow. Wow. And I believe that, and co-authors, please chime in. I believe that by that title, you are also calling on your people because we connected to that name. We knew we understood what you were saying. We understood that name that we picked up or that we clinged to or we adopted, good or bad, and it spoke to us. It meant something to each one of us, right? And the evidence is that we all wrote about some name, but I believe that it just how divinely appointed all of this was. So thank you, Cecily, for this really amazing book title. So for the co-authors, I remember in one of our initial calls, the person facilitating the conversation said, have you thought about your names? And some of us said yes, some of us said maybe, some of us said no. We were all in the range. And I remember hearing this statement. If you are doubting and you're hesitant about multiple names, pick the harder one. Pick that one that is going to be harder for you to write about. Do you remember that moment? Please share your reactions and remember that very powerful statement.
Yeah, I remember that statement, and it's funny because I had an idea of the name I wanted to use, but what that triggered for me was the story I wanted to tell. The most vulnerable part of my story needed to be told because number one, we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the power of our testimony. And number two, through my vulnerability, having the courage to speak some of the hidden secrets or things that we tuck away actually relieves us of the shame and the guilt. So when she said that, it triggered to me because I was having a conversation with God about it too. I'm like, you really want me to write about this particular thing? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, okay. And then she says that, write the hardest part, because it's actually the hardest part that you write about, that you speak about, that actually brings you the most freedom. The reason why it's hard is because there's some fear, there's some lie there that's trying to keep you in darkness, that's trying to keep you in fear, that's trying to keep you bound. But once you take your authority over that thing, you will forever be free. And when she said that, it scared the daylights out of me.
Yes.
Because it forced me to have conversations I never had. It forced me to have conversations with myself that I never had. And it forced me to forgive myself. But when she said that, it gave me permission to be vulnerable. It gave me permission to do the hard thing. So I distinctly remember that moment.
I don't know why it was so memorable. Anybody else wants to share that moment with us? What was it for you?
I can say that it took a while for me to settle on mine. And I was thinking about why was that process? Because I have been through, the Lord has taken me through a season of some trauma. And I've spent a few years kind of peeling back layers, peeling back. The Lord has been faithful, peeling back and peeling back. So I had some stories that I was like, oh, it could be this, it could be that. And then I kept asking myself, but where did it start? Where did it start? And then I remember being like, Griselda, you having a podcast is also an aspiration of mine. And early
Let's
on,
talk about it, Erica.
okay, well, early on, and I have it in a notebook of ideas, I wanted to do something about fairy tales because there was a root of bitterness because the fairy tale never came true. And so I had that theme. It was like the Johari window. Like I was able to see what was there, but no one else could see it either because it wasn't something I spoke about. It's something, and that's in my chapter. I speak about that there is this little naive girl that thought life was based her life on lies in a way and thought that was okay because in our society, what's a fairy tale? It's a nice little thing and little girls and, that's what we tell them and princesses and things like that. So when I decided, I was like, this is going to be boring, I think, right? When I picked it. But I was like, you know what? But there are other young women who may be in that same trap. And if I can help one with hearing my folly, then that's okay. And so I really had to come to a peace because it wasn't like a wham, bam, grab your heart or anything like that. But I felt like it was a root. Like you got to go down and get that root out. And once you get that root, everything can start healing again. So that was mine. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. And we have names as chosen, daughter, happiness. What's a name? Romantic women, redeem. I mean, so many powerful names here. Anybody else wants to share how you got to write about that one name before we move? Come on, Dr. Tin.
Sure, I can go ahead. So, I remember when that was said about choosing the harder one, and I was like, oh no, but I don't want
Really?
to.
Did you just say that?
I said, why did you say that? And, as God started to show me, because the name I heard first, it's similar. I chose chosen, right? Hence my hat. And the more I read about chosen, I'm like, God, that's really me, because as I started to dig into it, the Hebrew word for chosen is bakar, which not only means chosen, it means to elect, to appoint. And that for me was a lot of weight. And, coming from my background, growing up the way I grew up and my past, and I was like, God, you're choosing me, you're electing me. Who am I to be elected? And, like the author says, was it Napoleon Hill? That's the book we're reading now. Talking about Think and Grow Rich. It says thoughts truly are things, right? So, as the Bible says, so a man thinketh, so is he, or thoughts influence our feelings, which influence our actions, which influence our results. Everything comes from your thoughts, and your thoughts come from your blueprint. So where was my blueprint from? And as I mentioned earlier, I was in a wilderness, and, God had to I was totally dismantled, and he kind of just put me back together. And so the word of God became my blueprint of who I was, right? But when this idea comes to you, the enemy, who is the father of lies, is always going to try to pull you back and pull you back into that condemnation and pull you back into that shame. And I had to just push through by the grace of God, by Cecily just encouraging me. I remember I hadn't seen her for a while, and she's like, yeah, she didn't, I don't know exact words she used, but she's like, yeah, you're different, and, as I read through all of her stories, I mean, I couldn't cry. My heart was just heavy. The tears were stuck in my heart. It just became heavy, because what I realized from reading each of our stories is we've all been beautifully broken so we can be beautifully morphed. It was a prerequisite of the light that we could share. That's why as I listen to each of you talk, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not a coincidence. This is a God incident. This was divinely ordained. And just being, I think this is my first time I've ever been around a group of women who all we do is edify and pour into each other and lift each other up. Because, like one of you wrote in your chapters, every good and perfect gift comes from God above, right? Who's the Father of lights, in whom there's no shadow of turning. I mean, he's not changing in his mind. And so I'm just so grateful, but it was difficult, right? Because the enemy was there, all the little the way. But thank God again for Cecily. And we don't grow when we're comfortable, right? So growth is uncomfortable. And so I'm just so grateful for the opportunity. I know I keep saying it over and over because, like I said, I'm a numbers girl. My minor was math, whether it's Felicity's or Erica. There's something in there for everyone. And it just, like I said, made my heart heavy in a good way. Like, this is beautiful. And so I'm just grateful.
Yes, you did for sure. And you do have numbers in your chapter, a few, like May 2012, December 2017. You're still a numbers girl. How about you, Brittany and Felicity? What was your experience?
Like I said, God had already given me my name, but I'm that woman who I'm always asking for confirmation. So I'm like, God, I know you said this, but I need to be completely clear that this is what you want me, the direction that you want me to go in. And so throughout the process, especially in the beginning, I was really praying, and I looked at all the other names that I had that were possibles. But I remember that day vividly, because as soon as that was said, that was my confirmation. I'm like, this is the one that is the hardest. This is the one that shows the biggest transformation in my life. And so God was like, this is the one I want you to write about. Because just like Diane said, it caused me to have to be vulnerable. It caused me to have to share things that I never in a million years would have imagined sharing with the public. There are people who've known me my whole life that, don't know the things I wrote about. And so it really caused me to sit with God and to wrestle with God a lot about how much and, how to tell the story and how to share enough to let people see what I've been through, and also to share enough to let people see the transformation that came out of it. And ultimately, I was wrestling with myself because God was calling me to a higher version of me. And I fought it because it was uncomfortable. Like Judine said, it was very uncomfortable to leave that familiarity and go to that place of the unknown where God was calling me. But I'm grateful that, he gave me the strength and to be obedient. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Brittany.
Mine's very similar to Felicity with that battle. I think it's like truth's intention, because you're wanting to remind yourself of the identity of what God gave you. And I know, like Myron says it, right? Like we're built up with this lie identity, but we're trying to learn our my identity. And so I just love, each of our stories and our processes, as you can tell, it's building on that. It's removing and putting to death that lie identity so we can fully grasp and be open for that my identity. And I'll tell you, I had a hard time getting vulnerable. I mean, Cicely and the team had to meet with me and be like, okay, can you get more vulnerable? Can you get more open? Can you share more here? Because it was hard. It was a battle on internally of the things that I know I went through, but what I wanted to share, if I wanted to get that vulnerable and be so vulnerable as a part of my story. And there are some pieces that, some of my family doesn't know. And so it's realizing, like, if I step out, this is something that's going to come out to the open, and being prepared for that. So it definitely was a struggle internally, but that's where the breakthrough happens. It's bringing what's in darkness to light and letting it be redeemed and refined. So it's been an honor.
Wow. Ladies, one thing is to go through the process, another one is to read the stories, but just hearing you speak about your own process on choosing those names, I just want to take a moment and express my admiration, respect, and gratefulness of your boldness and courage to not go with the easy answer, because it would have been much easier, right? But to go with the hardest option possible. Who does that? Come on. Who does that? We knew we all had stories that were much easier to tell. But one, we were committed to the transformation that we knew we were being called to have. And number two, these stories were not for us, right? And we're, as my audience, as you heard all of these stories, every one of us had someone in mind, like that one who was going to read our story and be transformed and be inspired. And one really amazing thing about this book, which is very unique in this book, is we all ended with a call to action. It was not like to Erica's fairy tale ending and they live happily ever after. It's like, no. This is life. And if I grew, I am going to help you grow. And this is my call to action for each one of you. And I think this is a beautiful thing, because it doesn't speak to our commitment to our own growth, but the commitment that we have for the readers for their own growth. And that was something that Cecily had in her ordained instructions, that we needed to have a call to action. So Cecily, thank you for that. So switching gears, we've talked about fears and
Show
FOMO.
the book again.
Yes, yes.
Put it on up there. Yes.
Yes, it is our published book, just for the record. Moment of
Shameless
bragging.
plug.
I know. You can buy it. I'm kidding. I'll give that information in a little bit. So we talked about fear, shame, transformation, a story to tell. Can you, each of you, share what were you most fearful about, and why you were bold enough to go through it as you were writing it? You already had your name. You knew what you were doing. And then these moments of fear came about. Share with us that process.
I'll just say this, because for me, it was owning my part of the story without dishonoring other people who were intricately involved. And it could have been very easy to point fingers or go into a different spirit. And for me, I had to get to a place where I could take authority over my part and really hone in to. So it got scary, because I was like, okay, I don't know if that's mine to tell. And I was like, no, there was like that internal battle that Brittany was talking about, like, no, that's mine. And then I think we all discussed at one point or another that, people will be reading this. And it is. It was so wonderful to be with you all, women of faith, and as Dr. Judine said, support one another. And I think we've all had people we've been around that have not offered those things, and they may still be in our lives. And I think for me, it was navigating, being authentic and telling my story and being honest, and also the consequences of that story being told.
The consequences.
Yeah.
That's strong. But it is so real. Wow.
Absolutely, Erica. I agree with you, because, like you said, our stories intertwine with other people, and definitely did not want to dishonor anyone, but wanted to be authentic to my truth. And so that was a big piece for me. The other piece for me was, again, obedience. Because as I'm listening to God through this process, he's telling me, lead with your weakness. And that is something that I've never done. I want to put my best foot forward. I want to share my strengths and all the great things that I'm skilled at, and those things that cause insecurities, I hide them. I don't want to share them with people, but God has shared with me that the more I'm open with those areas, the more people see that I can help them. Because if I can walk through my own stuff, I can help them walk through theirs. And so that was really powerful for me to just get to a place where I was comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Wow. And Felicity, I think that is the expectation from society, right? To be strong, especially for women. I mean, you see in this room is like beautiful, strong women who have been successful in whichever endeavor they've set on, but yet the beautiful transformations needed to take a different turn in our lives and acknowledge and embrace those moments of weakness, because that was the source of transformation. And that is super counter culture, which makes it even harder, right? To share those stories and to feel comfortable with sharing those stories. Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Felicity.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, my fear was breaking that perfect image, so to speak. So when I'm telling this story about my own weaknesses, my own vulnerabilities, how many people in my life will their perception change of me? And that's what I was going back and forth with. And when I was talking to the Lord about it, I just expressed my frustration and exhaustion and fatigue with just living for other people. And if you read the story that I told, it makes sense.
Yes.
Because I think, especially when you have the title of like the good kid, or the one who knows what to do, knows how to live right, people just take that as it is and assume you don't go through anything, or you don't have any weaknesses, or you don't have, any troubles or tribulations. But writing this story is letting people see behind the curtain and what happens when the Oz is just a man. It's no one, just you. It's just a human. And what will people do with that? And writing this book helped me kind of overcome my people pleasing tendencies.
Wow.
Because when you live serving other people, you will forever be bound to other people's opinions of you. And that's a way I no longer want to live. And I had to keep telling myself that so that I could break free of other people's opinions. And writing this book helped me break free in other areas of my life so that I could live in obedience to God rather than in obedience to people who really have no control over my life to begin with. So it was taking that authority back, that I'm in control of my life. So how will I decide to live it? Like, how will I decide to live my life? And that's in obedience to God. So.
Wow. How amazing you connecting those weaknesses to doing the quote unquote right thing, the expected thing, right? And then the fatigue that came with that, and you being ready to break those ties and those chains and find the beautiful Diane that you were created to be and to do, and the impact of your story. Wow. People, seriously, this book, please, let's continue the conversation.
Well, I wanted to point out, I love what everyone's saying, because so much of it is the process of getting rid of the fear of man and just accepting the fear of the Lord, because he's going to be our strength in the weakness. And I feel like that's a recurring theme that I just wanted to call out as a part of this process, because that's really what a lot of this was, is the fear of what are people going to think, what are people going to assume about me now? Am I going to be judged, and that sort of thing? And so I just thank you, Cecily, for opening this up to us to be able to be stretched in that way, to let go of the fear of man, to then accept, like if God's for me, then who can be against me, and really just rely on him and who he says we are. And that was just such a big part of this process, I think, too, is just letting go and owning our identities. Like, this is a part of what made me who I am. And I don't believe that we go through things just for ourselves. It's to help other people. And so it's an honor and a privilege to be able to say, hey, I got through it. You can get through it too. And, helping them go further faster, as it's commonly said.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And Felicity, something you said just hit 2 Corinthians. His strength is made perfect in our weakness. And
in our weakness.
Yes. And so we were being biblical in all this fear.
Amen.
And revealing of weakness.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Yes, that was a theme scripture for me throughout this whole process.
Yeah, for sure. Because we go back to, we picked the hardest story to tell, right? And that was the most weak we were going to put ourselves into that position. Dr. Judine?
I echo with all that each of you has said. I was actually reprimanded because he said to me, "Do you think you went through this for you? This is not for you. I've called you to bigger than this. This is," and then I remember, 1 Peter 4 verse 10 that talks about everything that he's given. Each need each other's gifts and each other's stories. And that was a reprimand because he's like, "I called you for more than this. You're really trying to think about this, you got to do it." And, to Diane's point, God is light and in him there's no darkness, but we like to keep things in the dark because it's just safer in the dark, right? Because there's less judgment in the dark and there's less pretending, there's less wondering about working out of it, a people pleaser, right? And so it took a lot of like, oh my gosh, what are people going to think after they read my story and read the story? And so, I always think there's this thing that I've heard said, God chooses the broken vessels because how else would the light come out? And, it's important that we understand that our stories, even though they hurt us, they're light to so many's point, helps them to realize I'm not alone and I can do this, right? Because the word of God says, "And the light shineth in the darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not." It just impact the lives of so many. So just really grateful for that.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here, just taking it all in. Obviously, I shared the same fears that you all shared. But I think for me, as the visionary author and as the one stepping into territory that I had not been in before. Yes, I published a book because I did write a book in 30 days that I was trying to drag Diane into and anybody else that would accept the challenge with me. Because, there's a saying that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together, right? So I was trying to get some people to go with me. But I think for me, my biggest fear, in addition to putting my story out there, was that no one would respond to the call. No one would see the vision. No one would hear in their inner ear what God had spoken in mine in terms of writing this book. And just to be completely transparent, when the Lord gave me the title and the theme of this project, in my mind, I had my line sisters, women that I had pledged a sorority with. When you pledge a sorority, you get a name from your big sisters, a name that is like a gift to you. And so we each got these names, and I believe those names were prophetic because we got these names, we were 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. We were young, but we have grown into those names, right? When I think about each of those women, they have grown into those names. So my line name was Venturous, no big shock there. But I really thought that they would each want to write a story around the name that they had received. No, it wasn't for them. They did not hear it, perhaps the way I heard it, or could not necessarily see it. But for whatever reason, the people that I thought that this would resonate with, for whatever reason, it did not. And so...
Was that disappointing to you, Cecily, at that moment?
Yes, it was. I felt all the, rejection, not being good enough, just all of those unhealed sort of childlike wounds came into play. But God, I'll tell you, just from being surrounded by professional developers who just, I pivoted, I was like, if not you, then someone else, right? I know that this is for someone other than me. And so you all are the someones that heard the
Wow.
call, that sensed the time is now. The time is now. The time is now. And so I'm just in awe that one, when we think a thing is going to go a certain way and it doesn't, and how many of us have given up when the people that we thought would support us, when the people that we thought would hear it the way we heard it, right? And we're tempted to just give up. But as you all had heard some things from the Lord before you accepted this call, before you entered into this season, what I heard from God before this season was a song that says, "Though none go with me, still I will follow." And I mean, when he sung that song in me, there were people that I thought would be in my life that just were no longer in my life, right? There were doors that just closed. But that song, "Though none go with me, still I will follow." So because God had been working on my heart and had cultivated that in my heart, though it was a little seed, even though the people that I thought would be excited about this project, and no
Amen.
shade, right? Because,
Right.
sometimes it's just not what you think it's going to be. But again, to see you all, to hear you all, I honestly do not know if I can get out the words, what it means when God shows you the manifestation of that vision, that idea, that thought that he implants in your spirit. It is amazing. You all are amazing to me. So thank you for saying yes. Thank you for hearing it the way I heard it. Thank you for being brave enough to step out of your boats, right? Out of the darkness that had been holding us all back. Because everything that the tree was to become, everything the butterfly was to become, started in the darkness. And so I'm hoping that we are all cursing the darkness less, a little bit less on the other side of it. I'm hoping that while we might not say, "Yes, Lord, I'm just so grateful for that trauma that you allowed me to go through," we can now see the purpose attached to our pain. And it's beyond us. It's beyond us. And this is just the beginning. I told y'all, we've been called to stages. We've been
Yes.
called to share our stories. And
Yes.
you all are the ones. You all are the
Yes.
ones. And so I'm just super grateful to God to be here today.
Amen.
Cecily, as you were describing your own process, right? It had to be scary to put something out there that you had not done before, and then disappointing to not receive the response you were hoping for. But also makes me think that God says, "My plans are not your plans," right? They're much bigger and better than what you even imagine. So that is so powerful. And we're still writing the story. We don't know where we're going to go with this book or with these stories. And so just amazing. And one of the questions that I asked these ladies before this conversation was, what is one thing that you hope women or others listening to this conversation get out of this conversation? And it's totally along the lines what Cecily was talking about, to repurpose their pain to purpose, that you don't have to minimize yourself to appease others. There's enough room for your greatness and you are necessary. Wow, that's just amazing. That hope comes to you, that a clear understanding that everything they have gone through, like each one of you listening, everything that you have gone through and are going through can work out for your good if you keep the faith going. Another one, moving in faith requires a deep trust in God and his vision for your business. But we all are evidence of these statements, right? As I shared before, Cecily said, "I hope that you will take immediate, not action, just action, but immediate action upon what God has called you to do." And we are evidence. Each one of us has said yes to that one calling and many more callings that we will continue to receive, because God has called us for greatness. And with that, I want to transition into something that has been mentioned here, and actually was one of my questions for Cecily before I signed the contract. And I said, who are these co-authors? And she talked about briefly of the people who were already part of the group. Remember, I was a late joining a member, and she mentioned women. And I said, so this is a women only? She said, no, not necessarily. And I said, so is this a faith-based? And she's like, no, not necessarily. But I am amazed by the commonalities of these stories, right? If you have been able to pick up the patterns and the clarity of why we joined this effort, that it was prescribed even without us knowing. But one really powerful piece is the community that some of us has mentioned. Women helping women. And I'm going to call something that we women know, and we don't talk about it often, but we can be very mean to each other. We can be not helping each other. And actually, one of the conversations that we as a group had at the very beginning was that very thing. And I'd like to hear your perspective, Cecily, on what you saw as an opportunity for women to help women, and that once you had your final list of authors, that you realized it was all women and it was all faith-based. So tell us about that process you experienced at that moment.
Ooh, it was a healing moment, because part of my pushing or being pushed out of my comfort zone came as a result of being hurt by women, of being rejected, of being betrayed by women. And so, yeah, for me to I was open, right? I mean, if a man wants to write his story, I'm all for that, because I find that men seem to shy away from writing. And so as a midwife, I mean, it's a little weird to apply midwife to a man, but we're talking about stories. We're talking about giving birth to our stories. And so in that sense, it works. But when I realized that it was all women, because again, I told you I was starting with my sorority sisters. So, healing had already occurred, but I was pushing past fear of rejection, from women. I was pushing past, some residue. I was pushing past all of that. And so when I saw that it was all women, and these were women that I knew you all some kind of way. Griselda, you were the last woman in. And, we had just met, right? But, it just seemed right. And on the other side of it, we're like a sorority. This is a sorority. That is what my program offers. Sisterhood. Yeah, because to your point, we can be mean and competitive and covetous, of each other, but it doesn't have to be that way. There is, to your point, enough room at the table for all of us, and I just relish spaces where women see that and value that the way I do, and are protective of each other and honest with each other, right? Because let's face it, we will disappoint each other. We will get on each other's nerves from time to time. But, giving grace, and then, sometimes going and having a courageous conversation. It's possible for all of that to happen, and we still remain sisters. So, yeah, this has been very healing for me to just be in community with women. If you all knew my journey just from years back, I did the work, y'all. I did the work, and this is the evidence that I said yes to the wilderness, yes to the cutting, because when God begins to cut you, there's nothing you can run to. There's no pain reliever. And if you turn to it, it will only help for a moment. And then you will return right to that thing. But as you mentioned, We have been broken. I was broken in all the right places, and in those places where it was a wrong place to be broken, God fixed it. And so, once again, this is just the manifestation, the evidence of that healing, of the work that God did in me. And I'll say it again, I'm super grateful, so grateful to God for each of you and your sisterhood.
Yes, yes, for sure. And on the flip side, I know that Cecily was the commonality to all of us, but we did not know each other. Some of us knew each other, but not as a community. So, anyone wants to share your own process being inserted into this group of women who not you weren't only asked to write a story, the hardest one possible, but among a group of women. And to be honest, from my perspective, I was fearful of that process. What was that going to be with other women? And just pulling the curtains and putting myself in the most weak position ever, right? As we talked about it before. So what was your experience at that moment, ladies? Come on, brave ones. I know you're there.
I could go. So similar to Cecily, I never really had healthy relationships with women, and it was terrifying, wanted me to do. And so, the word of God says he gives power to the weak. And I just said, God, I'm being obedient to you, and I'm going to trust you through this, because I'd been through a wilderness, and I'm like, God, if you took me through that, you could take me through anything. And really that's what it was about when I first came on. I knew Cecily, and I knew of one other of her co-authors who unfortunately wasn't able to join us tonight, Sophia, but I didn't know anyone else, right? And so I just came in open, a little bit of guards up, but just like, hey, I'm gonna feel this out. I'm gonna see how this goes. I think what helped was the intentionality with which Cecily got us together. In terms of, it's not just about a book, right? We had conversations. So she facilitated it was like a facilitated organic relationship. If I give that again, anyway,
Yes.
don't beat me up,
Yes.
my English teachers, but it's like she made it as organic as possible. And just by getting us together, just by us sharing about ourselves, we kind of started, oh, okay, Felicity, okay, Cam, okay, Dr. Gazella, okay, Diane, okay. So you start to like relate. And so little by little, the walls started coming down. And it allowed us to be, because when the walls are up, you can't really receive, right? I couldn't really receive. So the walls had to come down. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, this woman is so amazing. And each of us has something that was so amazing. And yeah, look, I have goose pimples, but yeah, it was just really an amazing experience. It was terrifying, which I think, to Cecily's point, it's really just stepping out in faith, because you knew this was what God called you to do, called me to do. And so I just had to trust him that this is what he wanted, and I had to do what he wanted me to do. So.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, Dr. Jadine, also known as Juju. I had to Juju.
Always call me Juju. I love it. I love it. I should have changed it to Juju.
I call her Dr. Juju.
Dr. Juju. No, it's just Juju.
Who wants to share your own experience in that regard?
Yeah, I think for me, it was actually preparing me to be vulnerable for the book. So the more we met, the more we had conversations about, our own struggles. First, it allowed me to realize that it was a safe space. And I feel like for many of us, as both Cecily and Dr. Jadine spoke about, it's hard to find safe spaces. And Cecily does this great job of creating a space, facilitating a space where people can just be. And not receive judgment, not receive any criticism, just express what we're going through. And once I realized that it was a safe space, it gave me the freedom to start sharing my story, which made me have more freedom to write the story.
Wow.
So I just love how intentional God is. Like the whole process worked together so that I could tell my story. And it helped me realize that we're all needed. I think you said that in one of the things you wish, Griselda, that we wish someone would take away from the story.
Yes.
But if you hear us all and how our stories have transformed us and have transformed each other, you realize that there's no reason for competition because all of our uniqueness changes someone else's life.
Yes.
It changes someone else's life. So there's no reason to be jealous because the people I'm called to aren't the people you're called to. And it's okay because there's billions of people on the earth.
Yes. Yes.
That's right.
So once you realize, wait, I'm necessary, and so is my other fellow sister, so is my other fellow brother. You realize I just need to be the best me, and I actually want you to be the best you so that I can get what I need from you too, because your story is changing me. So once I realized that space was fostering that type of transformation, it was so easy to be vulnerable. So thank you all for being safe spaces.
Wow. I love what you said. I actually want you to be the best you because ultimately I also need you. I love it, but it's just so different than the motives of why we feel afraid of women or being afraid of being with women. And I want to hear the other stories, but it's just so powerful to not only having gone through the process of writing, but being in this conversation again and just pulling the curtains of what was that for each one of us. The boldness and the braveness was multiple level and multiple layers in multiple moments in this process. But who wants to share your experience?
I can go. I was sitting here reflecting, and I can say the community that was created was so well crafted. And in that, I think of what what Juju just said, and Diane, and it is both those things for me, is that we started it and we had a scaffold, and the scaffold was, we're all going to write our chapters, and it's going to have this and this and this in it, and we're going to get together so we can learn how to be, well, we didn't know, but every experience was a peeling of, okay, where's your heart? Where's your soul? Where are you? Where are you in this world? How do you see things? And the whole time it was just acceptance. So what a rare experience. You could come in and be snotty-nosed and crying, or you could be very businesslike and it was all good, and I think it was so therapeutic in that way. It was consistent, there was no canceling. It met on time, there were so many beautiful things that made it safe. That was by credit. And as an educator, I do know Cecily did that thing. It takes a lot of work to make safety. And so to her credit, it was excellent in that way. And then just to be, when we got to meet each other in person, and it's like, everybody's so beautiful and nice. It was so wonderful. So I think I just hold on to the results. So, because they're so fulfilling and worthwhile.
So, Erica, thank you for reminding us of this. But for my audience, all of this process that you're hearing was virtual. I think that's a very important piece because we're all over the United States. And so Cecily was the one coordinating bi-weekly sessions, and she guided us through this process. And I remember, it was the layers, as Erica mentioned. I remember one day I joined a few minutes late. And the reason why I was late, it was because I was highly considering a job opportunity. And I had just finished doing an exercise of pros and cons. And I was trying to convince my husband that it was like the right thing to do to take this job. And one of the primary reasons was financial stability. And so anyway, I joined the call, and here is Cecily talking, saying, the first thing I heard as I joined late, she said, "Are we really believing that God will reign on our business?" Okay, drop the mic, Cecily. Okay, that was the answer I needed. And so to Erica's point of the many layers that we experience in transformation, and us just hearing confirmations from God through each other's stories and conversations, it was so unexpected and so wonderful to experience. It was like, wow, what you needed is what you got that day. And so it was just amazing.
You might say it was unexpectedly successful.
Well, I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but yes. Yes. So yes, who else wants to share your story in the community perspective, in that unexpected piece that we really didn't know was coming our way? Somebody knew, but we didn't.
Yeah, I just want to share that without having known the rest of you beautiful ladies, I came in with only knowing one woman, having only met one woman in person, and the rest of you were literally strangers to me. And so coming in, not knowing what to expect, but immediately feeling God's presence and understanding that he was at the center of it all. And so it was just so strong. And, as our visionary author, as the leader of this project, Cecily, we follow you because you follow God, and I think that was very clear to me, coming in. Yes, you were intentional. Yes, you really did a lot to create a safe atmosphere for us. But ultimately, we saw you depending on the Holy Spirit. Day by day, some days it was moment by moment, and, we cried together, we prayed together, we really got in the trenches with each other. And that was rare. That was rare, especially for women who did not know each other. And, like you said, we're all virtual. So we're all in different states and, just different things going on in life. But the way that we committed to the process, committed to one another. And we just committed to, just the loyalty of not just the project, but the sisterhood.
Yes. Yes, it was required for the full transformation. And yes, for my audience, we've cried together, we've prayed together, laughed together, we've all together. It's been a beautiful process. And I want to go into the next question. And from my own experience, I thought this was writing a book, period, end of the conversation. And in reality, it has been a step-by-step process, including selecting the name, writing the book, the chapter, going through the rounds of editing, receiving the feedback, being so uncomfortable in that spot, then having to go back to reread a story that was already painful enough to write it, to then just go back to read it, then getting us to publication. And that being another huge moment, right? So Cecily, I want you to please briefly talk about publication, because it was such a crucial and essential step in this overall process. You as our visionary author, what was passing through your mind at those moments?
Is there another question?
Can we pass to the next one? No, but I think what I want to go into is like, what kept you going despite the challenges? Because going back to what Felicity said, you knew you had to deliver upon the instructions you had received, but it was not easy.
No, it was not. And I think because I take responsibility very serious. When I'm responsible, it's got to get done. Okay. If I'm not responsible, you won't even know I'm there. But if I am the lead, if I am being depended upon, I take it very seriously. And I shared the story with you all when I was actually giving birth. And, it got to a point where I had been in labor 18 hours. And even those on my team, I had a team of people who had, put ice in my hands to elevate my pain threshold, who put clothing line pins. I don't know how many of you all know what it is to hang your clothes on a line outside, and you have clothing pins, and they would put them on the tips of my ears and pinch until I couldn't think straight to elevate my pain threshold. And during my process where I was in labor a long time, and I guess the doctors just wanted to be done, and so did my birthing team. And so everybody began to change the story. The plan was for me to give birth naturally, but the doctors started saying that I should have a C-section, and that was not the plan. And so, I fired my team. I kicked them all out of the room. I'd gone through 2 shifts of midwives, and then the third one walked in. And I said to her, "Do you think I can do this? Is all I need to know. Do you think?" And she lifted up the little curtain and saw whatever she saw. And she said, "I think you can." I said, "Well, then you can stay, because I only want the people around me at this critical hour when I am at my most vulnerable and my brain is struggling to hold on to the plan." I just needed people, only the people around me who believed that it could happen. And so, yeah, the publication process was not without its challenges, right? Sometimes you have to offboard people because they're not sticking to the plan. And so, I was just committed to getting the book published. I was committed to you all experiencing that, and just realizing that it was possible for you to be brave enough to tell your story and then see it published and then see how it will change you and the world around you. I was committed to you all experiencing that. I had already published a book a few months before. So this is actually my second one. I wanted for you all, that had to be. Plus, I didn't want you all to collectively come to my door to be, And so I take being accountable very serious and getting the job done, even if that means, again, though none go with me, still I will follow. That thing is heavy on me. And so, yeah, it had to get done. There were times when I didn't know what I was going to do, and there were times when I was exhausted, honestly, with your stories. My heart was just so full and heavy carrying them. The whole editing process is exhausting. Just getting you all to trust the process at times was exhausting. Trying to be present in different people's situations, because life didn't stop for any of us, right? Myself included. It was all exhausting at times, but God just gave me, he just gave me the strength, and he knows how I am. If I'm the lead, if the responsibility is on my shoulders, it's going to get done. It might not look pretty, in that process. It might not feel good, but I just need people to trust me, just rock with me, just trust me. And that was my concern. I was worried that I would lose your trust, because you trusted me to come on this journey, and I had to trust God, and the people that he gave me. But when those people had run their course, bless the Lord, and I had to find new people and a new birthing team, right? I just needed you all to trust me, that I would do what I said I would do. Do as he would. I teach my students that. Do as he would. Do what you said you would do. So yeah, that's really important to me.
But Cecily, as you're describing the moment of birth of your son, and you ask that person, do you believe in me being able to do this?
Yeah.
I think at that point we were part of your birthing team, right? And we all raised our hands and said, we do believe that you will get us through this. And so even though it was a really stressful moment, it was all of us surrounding you saying, we believe you can give birth to this and help us get there. So it was beautiful. And I know it was a moment of transformation for you, Cecily. We now know that stories are not for ourselves, right? In the moments of stress. So thank you, Cecily, once again. So I'm going to go to a couple of final questions. And I want to touch on the one that in all of the chapters, without intention, because we did not read our chapters, each other's chapters as we were writing them. And so when you read this book, any pattern, commonalities, and common ground, it was not by our intention. So just to say that. One thing that is common to all the stories is transformation and seeking of life purpose. So I want to ask you, what is that for each one of you? What is your life purpose?
Well, I'll start. My life's purpose is to help other people. If it begins with women, that's fine, but whoever, to help people to give birth to that story, that first story at the very least, that will give way to so much more, to understand that there is purpose to the pain and to embrace what has happened to them, because if it were not for the darkness, right, the caterpillar cannot become deconstructed in order to be reconstructed, in order to be its highest version of itself. And so to just realize that God is in the midst of everything that happens to us, that is part of my life's purpose.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, Cecily. Anybody else?
I will say that I am open, but up to this point, I can say I had a season where my life's purpose was to, as a counselor, was to help children feel safe and have someone that they could trust in the school building. And that season ended. And then for the last 20 years, isn't that amazing? Because I'm only just turned 25.
Well, happy birthday, Erica. Happy 25th birthday.
Yes, it's amazing, right? But for the last 20 years, it was to introduce young people to the world of dance, the art form, the communication, the beauty, the power that is dance. And then for the last 17 years, it is to help cultivate and raise a young man who prayerfully will be a productive and important human being in what he does. And as he gets older, actually, this is what put me here. I had this prayer as I'm walking. I love to walk. I just love to walk. And that's usually when I'll talk with God. And I said, God, what's my next? So now what is, at least in my heart, it's manifested in my heart, is to be a coach and a person that helps adults find their health, their physical health. Find, because, how can you be in your purpose if you're sick, if you're broken down, if you don't feel good, if you're sore? And there are ways. Aging is not avoidable, but breaking down can be. And so that's where I really see and feel the passion in my heart to be that helper to adult folks. So,
Wow.
yeah, but I'm open, the good Lord, sometimes he throws you a curveball. So, but I'll say that's what I feel right now.
We're excited to see what's coming.
Yeah, so am I.
Anybody else?
Beautiful. So I would say that my life purpose is helping people discover their God-given identity, helping them to connect with who they were intended to be, especially after trauma. And as I said in the beginning, just as a glory carrier, reminding them of God's glory through every stage of their transformation.
Wow. Wow. No pressure, huh, Felicity?
I know. How do you follow that? I'll try. Thanks, Felicity. But that was beautiful. So I think my purpose is to be an ambassador of God's light and love. He's helping me to become more comfortable speaking because he's shown me that he wants me to tell my story to help others going through their wilderness, going through their dark place, that you don't have to look like your past, that he will give you beauty for ashes, that transformation is God's continuous work in you. We are going to be continuously transformed as long as we are here. Yes, you're healed, but the word of God says you are being transformed from glory to glory. And you could be healed in one aspect, but there's another aspect. Like Cecily said, there is constant pruning because the word of God says he continues to prune you so that you may produce more fruit. He chastens us so it produces pure righteousness. And so it is not like you go to God, he fixes you and it's done. It is a continuous process. And knowing that as we look to him, as we cling to him, the word of God says he will never leave us. He will never forsake us. It's not an easy process, right? But, I always think of that scripture and I can't even remember. It's in Hebrews. It says that Jesus, because of the cross, right? He withstood what is it again? And for the sake of the cross, he despised the shame and he pushed forward, right?
Wow.
And so it's important to understand that the walk isn't easy. Healing isn't easy. Change, it requires work, but it's about being committed to yourself and knowing that you're not doing it by yourself. The Holy Spirit is here with us. This is why he ascended. When his disciples said, why do you have to leave? He says, I have to leave so the Holy Spirit, the Comforter, can come. And so that is my purpose. I feel like that's what God has told me, is to share the word of God and to share the light and love of God, and that his continuous presence with you.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Jadine. Diane.
Yeah, so I would say my purpose is to be a bridge. I take people from a point of confusion to a place of clarity. And usually that is during people's transitional periods. So I use my experience, the truth that I have that comes from the Word of God, and the resources that I have to help people find clarity quickly so that they don't have to struggle longer than they have to, so that they can meet who they're supposed to be, become all that they're supposed to be, as efficiently as possible.
Wow. Wow. And for my audience, have you ever been asked, what is your life's purpose, right? And it's a very loaded question. And I am so amazed by not only the clarity of each of your answers, but the boldness and the excitement that comes as you speak it. And I don't know about you, but one of the hardest things is to get to a point of clarity. And once we have that, it's just a matter of time for that vision to come to realization. So I'm super excited for each of our next steps. And for my audience, if you have never asked yourself, what is your life's purpose? I think this is a great opportunity for you to consider and start digging into what that may be, because it's a powerful moment to be an exciting moment. All right. And I am going to go to my next question, second to last. Were you ladies expected to be successful in this beautiful journey?
Wow. Was I expected to be successful? I would say by the person who saw this in me before I could even see it. Yeah, she expected me to be successful. She was convinced that this was my play. And so it does help to have someone who's like, girl, this is all you. This is you. But that wasn't enough. I had to wonder, am I going to be successful? And so I had to push past that. And then, of course, when you first pitch it to people that you think surely they will jump at this opportunity, and it doesn't exactly happen that way, it's enough to kind of knock you back a couple of feet. But God, as He would have it, would not allow me to retreat. We don't make excuses, we make adjustments. And so I just pivoted, in a different direction. And then it became, do you all think that I could lead you? Do you all think we could get it done, especially when it seemed like things were taking some unexpected turns, right? Did you all think that it could happen? That was very, very important to me. And again, I'm just super grateful that you all maintained your trust in me. That you stayed the course, that you believed enough in your story, in the collective project, in each other to just keep going. So that's a loaded question, Griselda. I love the
I
question.
know.
I would
I know.
say I was really grateful for the one who I would say that God used her, to kind of put his hand in the small of my back and push me, you know, um, and that, her belief in me just helped me to get out. And then your belief, your collective belief in me and in the project helped me to keep going, even when I had doubts. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. What about for the beautiful co-authors? Were you expected to be successful as a published author? What are your thoughts on that question?
I would say that even the idea of success is all about perspective. I knew that it was going to be successful because God's hand was in it, all over it, but not knowing how. And just how God does, I mean, He completely blew my mind with the level of success. And when I say success, I mean, number one, the transformation within me, just the things that I saw purged from my life as I was writing, just going through the process, the things that He allowed me to step into because of His love and because of His grace, the conversations that I was able to have. I think that alone is success. Having really powerful, intentional conversations with my family members, with friends, just really being bold, which was my word for last year. Just even that, even the success of the level of boldness that He allowed me to see in this process. So I think it's all about perspective, but God always has surprises.
Wow. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Anybody else?
I think it was Diane who said earlier how she had a moment where she said, I'm not going to offer any resistance. And I'm going to borrow that because, and when I think about being unexpectedly successful, if we stay in His will and obedient to the calling or the activities He would have us to do, we have no choice but to experience success because it's all His anyway. So come on. That's what, come on. Yes, yes.
Wow. Yeah. Drop the mic, Erica. Right there.
And you know what? I think that's what makes it unexpected because people have their perception of the success for you. but your success is actually being obedient to the Lord.
Amen.
And that might not look like what people expect.
Mm.
But you were successful because you did it and you said yes.
Mm. Beautiful. Beautiful. Dr. Judine?
I was scared, but I was like at peace.
Mm.
So it's like I was at peace within like whatever is supposed to happen. This is not just the will of God. This is God's perfect will for my life at this very moment.
Wow.
Because there's this permissive will and then there is this perfect will. And when I prayed about this, I felt like this is what God wants at this very moment. And to Erica and Diane's point, as long as God is in it, as long as his perfect will is going to be done,
Wow.
he defines what the success is. So I literally was just like, I'm just in the boat. I'm going to stay in the boat. I'm just going to go wherever you want me to go. So that's literally what it was. It was like being in the boat in the dark, right? Because it's so
Wow.
new and you're like in these waters because you're trying to figure it out. But it's like at all points, God is in my boat. So
Yes.
at any moment, even if the storms are blah, 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 acting crazy, that God is in my boat. So I would not rather be anywhere else. And so
Wow.
I was just open to whatever God was going to let happen. Because
Wow.
either way, I know I would have learned something from that process.
Mm. So, wow. From so many different perspectives, success was never a question, right? However, it was coming to us, but it was coming. So the last
Wait, can I
question
say
is,
one more thing, Griselda? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sure, yes.
I think success also is defined by previous wins and achievements, right? Because prior to this and all the twists and turns that accompanied this project, this journey, again, when I was the director of the women's ministry that Judine was a part of, she was a part of the last cohort that came through when I was serving as the director, and the pandemic hit, which of course was unprecedented for most of us. None of us had ever experienced that. And under my leadership, we were the first ministry to pivot online. Other ministries were shutting down. And I refused, I lost some credit for this, but I refused to shut the ministry down because the pandemic hit, because there was Zoom. And I didn't see any reason why we shouldn't serve women if, in fact, that was the time when we needed to connect with women, with just be connected. And so, God had taught me to not abandon the plan just because unexpected things happened. And maybe because I wasn't thrown off by that, I wasn't swayed by the people who were like, we need to just shut it down. Other ministries are shutting it down. And I was like, but why? But why? We can throw a Zoom link. We even had a beautiful tea party, right? Online. Exactly. Exactly. And so, come on here. And so, yes, and so I think sometimes, yes, success, but it's because of the other wins. It's because of previous obedience and yeses and offering no resistance. Even though the process, it seemed like we were in the boat and the boat was going to flip completely over, because we stayed true to that and the Lord brought us through. I had no reason to doubt him. I didn't know how always. And yes, I was tired and frustrated, but I knew that he would bring us through to the other side if people would just stay the course. So, yeah, I have to definitely draw on past experiences to say that is what gave me the fortitude to keep going when I wasn't sure where we would go.
But Cecily, not only, I mean, the fortitude, but also that you were being trained, right? Because as we mentioned before, all of this happened in a virtual world that you may not have felt as comfortable if you had not done that training already with women who were seeking to grow. And so nothing goes to waste, and you just had the knowledge and abilities to just pull from your toolbox to implement for a different purpose.
You were equipped. God equipped
you were equipped.
Yes.
You were equipped. Wow, that's so beautiful. And yeah, I love those reflections on success because they're very powerful. And the last question: how can you summarize this beautiful process into one word? One word. Hey, ladies, you've done more harder things already.
I felt my word. So resilience.
Resilience. Birthing.
I was thinking perseverance.
Perseverance.
I'll say metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis.
Life-changing.
Life-changing. Wow. 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 For me, what would that be? Healing. Healing. And we lost Brittany, but we'll post her word in our description because it's so fun to hear what processes mean, different things for different people, but all powerful at the end. Ladies, I am so blessed and honored for you giving me your time, for you allowing me to dig through the stories, to pull the curtains, to say, what happened? So tell me in that moment, let's go to it. And for you to be vulnerable, to continue to be vulnerable, and for you to continue to be committed to what you are called to do. And despite it being hard or difficult or challenges coming your way, I have no doubt that each of your life purposes will come to fruition. And that is so amazing to be part and witness of that unfolding before each other's eyes. And so I am so proud of you. Any last remarks for my audience at the closing?
I do. I have one last remark. I just pray that your audience members would feel a call to action every time they see a butterfly. When they see a butterfly, they would know it's time to say yes to God's process. It's time to do whatever it is that He has called them to do. It's time. The time is now. Yep.
Wow. The time is now. Wow. Very true. Very true. She continues with her calls to action, I'm telling you.
Huh?
That is right. That is right. Any final thoughts, my ladies?
I would say, shameless plug, you should spend your money wisely and get the book.
Yes.
Because it's going to bless you.
Yes.
And truly, it was written for you. I mean,
Yes.
you were put on our hearts. You were put in our spirits, even when we weren't sure who you were. And so when you buy the book and you see yourself, you've joined our sisterhood.
Oh, beautiful.
We love you. And if this young lady over here ever offers this process again, you'd be smart to jump in.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Yes.
Totally,
Yes.
totally. And for my audience, the contact information for visionary author Cecily Cooper and now publisher, I should remark that, because nothing goes to waste, right? Again. So Cecily is now a publisher, and I know that this process will be replicated. And as Erica mentioned, if a book is in your heart, which I now know everybody has a book in their heart, at least one, please take this opportunity, because as you've heard, it's transformational. It's just a process that is used for so many other doors to be unlocked. And The description will have all the details about Cecily and how to contact her, and also a brief description of each of the other co-authors that were present today, what they do, how you can get in touch with them, because as we've heard, each one of us has people assigned to the things that we are called to do and the people who we are called to serve. And with that, I want to thank each one of you listening to these powerful stories. And if you heard something that you know somebody needs, please share with them, because we never know where the continuous transformations will continue to occur and the ripple effects to transform others' lives. Until next time, more to come with Unexpectedly Successful.